Okay, so we're starting back up, and that'll get you going and let you know where we're at. So today's going to be a little bit of a different service, and we're going to wrap up this idea of studying race in the Bible. We're going to touch on where I think the next logical component to that, and that's issues of justice and how all of that intertwines. And so this morning, we're going to ask that you just work with us, and we're going to introduce you to a couple that a lot of you know, but you may not know them as well as you think you know them. And so we're going to introduce you to folks who are going to help me in the service today. So up on the screen, I'm going to just kind of quickly take you through a quick walk of their life. I want you to meet the Fletchers, Anthony and Linda, and you'll see that they met in high school way back in the day. And this is Highland Park High School. She was 16, he was 17. Sounds like a song, doesn't it? And their lives became connected from there. Then they got married, and for 41 years they have lived together as husband and wife. August the 4th, 1979. God bless their family with a son. Actually, they had two sons. They moved to this home on North Lawn in West Detroit after they were wed, and then their first son, Dwayne, was born in 1980. The second son, Damon, came along in 1982, and then in 1994, they moved to this home on Oakville Waltz Road in New Boston and to engage in better education for their children and Anthony's dream of owning horses. He has two, Red and Apache. I did not know my friend was a cowboy at heart, you know, and that's awesome. Well, education is important to the Fletcher family. Damon attended airport schools, and he completed undergrad, and he's the one on the left. He completed his undergrad at The Ohio State University, and now you know why I love this family absolutely to death. He did his grad work at Florida State University. By profession, he's an ophthalmologist. He lives and works in the Washington, D.C. area. Dwayne attended Airport High School, did his undergrad at the University of Toledo. He's an electrical engineer and married Devetta on August the 9th, 2019. They got 4 granddaughters, and you want to get them going. You talk about their grandbabies. And they've been here a good bit. Bailey, Hannah, Sloan, Dana, and they now live in Benson, North Carolina. Well, after the kids were established, Linda went back to college, completed both her undergrad and grad school at the University of Phoenix with an MA in finance. She's employed by Comerica Bank, serving as in a vice president position in retail operations with 5 exempt direct reports and oversight of 97 banking centers in Southeast Michigan. She's been there for 41 years. Basically, that means if you go into her bank, she's a big deal, all right? And Anthony has been employed by Carmagno Foods as a truck driver, servicing restaurants locally for the last 41 years. They love their family. They love their Lord. They love our church. You can see pictures of their grandkids there on the next. And then the final picture is of Anthony and Linda. Their family has grown, and today they're excited about spoiling their granddaughters. We are happily married, and I'm reading from her text. We are happily married until death do we part. I love that. Anthony is my soulmate, and we look forward to enjoying retirement together. Many travels throughout various countries. Will you welcome to Kirby Stage? They've been here for 5 years. You guys know them. You love them. Anthony and Linda Fletcher. Would you welcome them to Kirby? So welcome, guys. I'll give you a second to come on and get comfortable and get situated. And so, first of all, thank you guys for doing this. I tell them privately, and I tell them publicly, Terry and I, absolutely love this family. They've been in our home many times in our life group a couple of years ago. And we'd go home after church and eat and just talk about church and watch a little bit of the football game. And because it's the Lions, it was always a little bit of the football game, right? You know? Yeah, Anthony and I were big football guys. And so, anyway, welcome. This, we started talking about doing this 5 weeks ago, a month ago, 5 weeks ago. So this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment thing. And I'm just telling you, we want you to be a participant in today's service. Now, this was, when I asked them what else would you like to do, they said, we would like to answer your questions. And so if you have a question, anytime as we kind of walk through this, then there's my cell phone number. You can just text me at that number, and we'll do our best to get them in or make it a point that they answered that in the dialogue. So anyway, glad to have you guys here again this morning. So let's start off with the first question we started off. What was it like growing up in Detroit? You guys, by the way, just kind of tell us 7 Mile and 75, 6 Mile and 75.
First of all, thank you, Pastor Mike, for even allowing us to speak our truth and share our experiences. But in Detroit, I'm going to say that I did not experience a lot of discrimination or racism because I was in that pocket of people like me. Mm-hmm. So you're not going to experience that because that's all I know. It was just the same type of people that looked like me. So I didn't experience any type of racism until I left that group, and that was when I began my career. So as I began my career, the first situation that I experienced was when I had my performance review. So when I had that performance review, the feedback from the deliverer was very awesome. It was, I was doing the best job ever. You're doing great. You're getting the satisfactory. But then you can see that that's not the highest rating. But the feedback that I was receiving was just overwhelmingly, I was doing awesome. And so I had asked the question, then what do I do to become outstanding? And the response was, it was just a silence because they didn't know how to respond. It was, this is what we, normally do. We give you that satisfactory. And so he indicated after that, you won't experience this any longer. And so from that point, I think he knew at that time that he felt a little different. What am I doing here? So from that point, as I advanced throughout my career, the first thing that I would receive from him is a card. Just awesome job, congratulations, I knew you, it's in you. And so he just followed me throughout my career, just making sure that he understood that he wanted to recognize and be kind, because it was probably from that point that he just realized that he did something that he probably didn't realize. Mm-hmm. And so I really appreciated that, and that was my first experience. But there were other experiences where the door closed, and you are not selected because you need to now have a degree, and someone else could get the position, and it was obvious they did not. And so I knew that anytime that there was a door that closed for me, that I know I needed to do something to persevere beyond that point. And so that's how I looked at it throughout life, is whatever I needed to do, then Linda would make sure that she needed to do to persevere and move beyond it.
I love that because, we've all had those doors shut, and you didn't, irregardless of color or background or money or politics, and you didn't let it didn't make you bitter. You went and became better.
Correct.
Yeah,
yes.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Anthony, what about you, buddy?
Well, me,
You'll need to hold your microphone right there.
All right, right there.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, y'all. But you know, I had a really good life. As a matter of fact, I'm thinking I'm living a fantasy life in Detroit because my parents made sure that I had everything I needed. You know, keeping the outside away from the inside. So I didn't know things was like that until, you know, the riots. You know, I see tanks coming down the road. That was something to me when I look back on my childhood to see that. And but still, it didn't affect me because I went on to grow up and just be, you know, everybody have the same life. You get your kids what you need, and while they're growing up, and they have everything. You just live in happiness. That's where your foundation is going, is built. But outside of that, when I was coming up in Detroit, I had one experience with the police. First, I think the police is the best. If I need the police, I call on them. Thank you, Lord, the police is here, right? But I think it's just good and bad. In this situation, we were out, young kids out there, just walking around. We wasn't doing anything, but my mom was out of town. I figured, you know, she's out of town, let me go with the fellas. And we ran up against this police officer. He showed the badge. I'm thinking, my mom is going to kill me. So I was feared of my mom, so I ran. He figured I was doing something. He caught me, and we walking back to the vehicle. He hit me upside the head with the gun. I'm thinking, wow, man. So I've been looking at Adam 12. What Adam 12, you know, you get caught.
The TV show.
The TV show. I guess some people don't know about One Adam 12.
No, millennials don't know.
My
They
fault.
have no idea.
That's a police show where, you know, the criminals do something, you catch them, and then they just take them to jail and do whatever they need to do. But I'm thinking that, so that didn't happen. And then the other guy who was with me got caught, so they took us to Palmer Park, a park in the middle of the night, and they said, well, did anybody give them their rights? They said, no. He said, I'm going to give you your rights. You don't have any because you block N-words. I'm thinking, man, this is not One Adam 12. I had fear in my heart. And then after that, after they got finished beating the other guy a few more because I got hit with the gun. They didn't beat me anymore. They beat him. So when we got to the police station, I was so happy to see that police station. I was like, whoo, the police station. So anyway, they called my dad. I was happy to see him, but my mom is the one I feared. So when I saw her, she encouraged me, and she said, it's okay, and then after that, it was all good. But I took something from that. It's like, it's all about what you're doing, not what somebody else is doing. I wouldn't have been in that situation if I would have been home like I should have. So I said from that point on, I am never going to hang around guys ever. And later on, I met Linda, and I've been with her since. So it's always something good is going to come out of your bad. But it's all about the way you look at it. You got to get to the light and get away from the darkness.
Yeah. And you're not bashing the police. You've got family members who
Yes.
serve, and you love them, and you love the police. It's just, that's your experience.
Right.
You know, and a formative time in your life as well. And so I'm glad you shared that with us. You know, we talked about, in our conversation, we've talked about systemic racism. And because I grew up like they grew up, I grew up in a white suburban cocoon. Everybody was like me, just like everybody was like you guys where you lived. And so all I knew was all I knew. And I knew I didn't hate people. It doesn't matter, rich, poor, smart, dumb, color, didn't matter. Didn't hate people, loved all people. And so when people would say, you know, there's systemic racism, I always kind of found myself pushing back just a little bit because I would go, well, wait a minute, that's not my problem because A, I'm not racist, and B, I wasn't there when all of that stuff got set up. And what we really, and this is, and speak into this, the easiest way I think I can explain systemic racism is that systemic just means that because of our race, there are certain advantages we've been privileged to. So if you were wealthy, or if you are wealthy, you have certain advantages that poor folks do not. If you have a degree in higher education, then you have certain advantages that those who do not have one or have not finished high school do not have. Because of your color, you may have had certain advantages that people of color do not have. The bank story, you know, with that first promotion and performance review. And so there are certain advantages we've been blessed, privileged to have, simply for no other reason than the color of our skin. And so I always kind of pushed back and said, I'm not responsible, but I may not have been responsible for the start of it or what, but I do believe that as a personal representative of Jesus Christ on this earth, whenever there's an injustice, I think we are supposed to speak into it, you know? And so our advantage that we've been blessed with works for a particular group of people, but then it also works against particular groups of people. Kind of help me out here.
So just as you're speaking, I think about the inequality, and I speak on the terms of education. And it's factual that in some of the minority segregated areas, black areas, we're going to always find in those school systems that they're underfunded, they are overpopulated, they have underpaid teachers, their ACT scores are low. So that's a problem. And so you're going to see those differences between those school systems and the suburban school systems. And I know that factually because I attended those schools, and then I also supported and still do support DACA, which is a program that helps the school systems. And so what I do is I go down to Cobo Hall. They have students come so that they can, we can review them and test them, how well they're communicating, or if they're interviewing for a job, they have to have a script and they interview for you and we score them. And so when I even do that, all I see is a lot of suburban schools participating in that DACA program, and their kids coming, and I'm sitting there and interviewing them, and so and testing them. But it's two different inequalities there, and so I just want to make that known that does still exist. And I go, what can we do? What can I do to help out? And so I do volunteer and go out to teach financial literacy in the Detroit public school systems, just so I can try to give back and deliver what I can to others. But we know that that's still factual, and that's something that we still deal with today.
Yeah, a pastor friend of mine, Pastor Mack, that I met this past summer, he was helping me with that, and just the fact that since school systems, their revenue funding comes from the tax base of that community, thus if it is a poorer community, they have less money, less resources, even though they may have more kids, and so there's just this financial inequality, and somehow I do think that has to be addressed, and I'm not saying, socialism or anything like that, but I do think there has to be some kind of equity, because we do have to be a part of, I think, speaking into and helping kids get a good quality education, and helping them, understand what's out there. Years ago, you guys know, you guys have been to Kirby about 5 years, right?
Yes.
And we go to inner city Detroit, and we do this vacation Bible school, and I got to know Pastor Matt Chris through Yolanda and Erica and others, and they're just an awesome staff down there. And I just asked him I generally ask him every year, but this was several years back. I said, what could we do? What could we do to help you? He didn't hesitate. He said, adopt our kids for one day. He said, just coming, we'll bring them to the church. People come and get them from the church. They can just, whatever that family does in a day, just do it. Don't do anything special, because they need to hear people talking about school, that school matters. They need to hear and see what good homes and all of that looks like. And again, this was a very, in southwest Detroit, we're talking about a really, 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 really rough area. But it's just something as simple as being an example. And I love the fact you go down and you do that, for them. Anthony, you've mentioned too about the police incident. We talked a little bit about just how in our culture, and again, it's factually true, that young black Americans, African Americans, tend to get more jail time and tougher sentencing than people of different color. I don't think we touched on that in the first service. And if you don't want to touch on it now, buddy, that's okay.
Fine. Systemic is,
Hold your microphone.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Systemic is hidden. But the only way you fix that is to talk about it, because it's hard to see it if you're not talking about it. Systemic that's how it's there so long, because people do not talk about it. And if you don't talk about it, it will never, ever be challenged, ever. Mm-hmm. So the only way you can deal with that is to talk about it. And that's like what we're doing now. And if you put it in the atmosphere, and believe me, it catches on, and other people are aware of it, because some people is not aware of the thing. But once they get to it, it's a push behind it, and it's going to be dealt with. It's just the way the system works. That's how come it's been there for so long.
Yeah, you guys are two of the most loving people I've ever met. And what kind of shaped that in you guys? I'm sure faith, and I'm sure parents, and I'm sure just, maybe not having it. We talked about your father there a little bit last week, and just what were some of the things that were the molders, the influencers, the shapers in your life?
I think it was the parents, because for my situation, it was my upbringing. It was whatever you did, right or wrong, we were challenged for them. And so they took us to church. We were always part of a church. And so we knew that, God loves us, and, we're the image of God. And so it was always about making sure that you love one another, you love your neighbor, you do things right. And if I did not do anything right, and it was against, something that they believed in, they absolutely chastised me. They wanted to make sure that they, like my kids, they want me to grow up and be the best person that I can be. And so I think just with that behavior, they kept us out of trouble. They didn't even speak about racism. We didn't even know about racism or us being any different than anyone else. And so I think that was helpful. All of that was helpful, and I think just, the way they raised us.
Yeah.
I talk about my mom a lot more than my dad. My dad, he was there, but my mom, she was an influence on me. She got her bluff in early. She always said, it's not what anybody else does. You cannot control anybody else. You only control yourself. So one day, I'm in school, 5th grade. This guy was talking about my mom, the little corny stuff. Oh, your mama wear army boots, stupid stuff like that, corny stuff. So we fought, and I got suspended. But I'm thinking, man, I really got him. I'm thinking all the way home, I'm going to tell my mom I had to beat up somebody for talking about you, Mom. I got home, and I told her that. My mom gave me the biggest discipline that I ever had. Man, you're talking about her. I'm thinking like, well, maybe she didn't hear me. Mom, he was talking about you. She said she never cursed in her life. She says, I don't give a darn what anybody says about me. They don't know me, and you don't respond for anybody who don't know you. Let people say what they want. As long as they're not doing anything to you, you go about your business. And man, I tell you, I live with that today. People can say what they want, but that means nothing. It's all about how you respond to what people are doing. And that's what you're accountable for. You're accountable for yourself, not for what somebody else is doing. And that goes with anything across the board. You know who you are, then go about and be who you are.
That's good. That's good. Talk just real quick about when you transitioned from living in Detroit to Oakville Waltz, different community, you know. I mean, how was it raising the boys then?
And I'm glad you asked that question because there was a difference for my children because they were, they had a diverse group because we didn't keep them in the Detroit public schools. We had them attend Catholic schools. But when we moved here, they became less than 1% of them, you know, the kids like them. And so they had to attend school systems where they dealt with situations, and whenever they were challenged or felt uncomfortable in situations, then that's when we would coach and guide them and help them out. But there were times where we even had to attend the board meetings, meet the superintendent of the school system, and I'm going to tell you, they absolutely supported us. It was not that we had any issues with them not supporting us. It was just us bringing that to their attention so that it can be addressed. So we had situations, of course, that we had to deal with, and of course, even my husband and I, we can, we have to attend, communities where we're going out to stores, and you may not see, we're that minority, and so we had to deal with those situations. And even Dwayne, we would ask him to go to Bush's and, pick up something, and he was like, I don't want to go there, and because he felt that they stare at him, and he just felt uncomfortable. And so we had to, again, help and guide him through those type of situations.
Yeah, and that's one of the questions that I just got was how did you experience systemic racism when raising your boys? And it was just when those experiences came up, you just dealt with it, you were involved. And you didn't go in, and this is from previous conversations that we've had, this is, like I said, been ongoing for us, but you guys didn't go in with demands or in a tirade. You just went in, here's a problem, want to make you aware of it, let's work together on it.
Let's work together, and really appreciated how they supported just us approaching them in that way.
Yeah. Anthony, I got a question for you. It's a good question. I wish we would have asked it in the first question, is how do we fix the lack of fathers in the homes, or the apparent lack of a strong father figure in the homes, and that seems to be represented anyway to us in the African American community?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think everything comes from your examples. If you're not looking at your example, like when you're coming up, if you don't have a father in the home, that's what they're used to. But if they don't have a father, usually it's an uncle or a friend. It's somewhere where it's a male example somewhere about taking care of their home. For me, my father was there, but the first 5 years he was not. But I had an uncle that took care of his family and our family. I always looked up to that, and that's what always stuck with me on the way he was. And I'm thinking, man, I want to be just like that with my family. So it's an examples that you have when you're coming up. But if there's no examples there, that's what you get when you have no fathers in the home, because that's what they're used to. They figure, okay, well, I didn't have it. Then you get another generation that's doing the same thing. But when you have examples and people reaching out to these kids, it changes their life. It really does.
And you
May
were,
it be a white or black family. Your example is your example. It's the family.
yeah, exactly.
Like TV shows. What they used to have TV shows is man and wife and family. I don't even know if they have that anymore much.
Not much. Not much. So when you obviously are an involved dad, you know, parent, and of course, parenting our adult children is sometimes challenging, and we take on a different role, but boy, grandchildren are just absolutely a blessing.
That's a different
Amen.
level. Yes.
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 Oh my goodness. See, now we're talking. right here.
Yes.
But tell the story just real quick, and we're quickly running out of time again, but just about the basketball tryouts.
Yes. You know, my son, I went to his basketball tryout at the airport. He's really good. And when I was there, he did everything right. He made every basket. He defensive plays, he was really good. I just knew he was going to make the team. He said when he came home the next day, I didn't make the team, Dad. I'm thinking, what? That's just, it's unbelievable. But I said, don't worry about what they're doing. You know you did the best you can, so you need to focus on what you need to do, not what they didn't do. So it's a way to say, well, life sometimes is going to, you know, it's going to be that way, but it doesn't matter what they're doing. It's all about what you're doing, and keep your focus on what you need to do, not what they're not doing.
Mm-hmm. And that's great. Well, listen, let's rapid fire questions. What are some things that we can do together as people of God's creation, as Christians? What can we do to help, just kind of break down some of the barriers that exist, you know, the perceptions, the stereotypes? What are some of the things that we can do? You know, I'll give you one. It would just kind of get us rolling. I think one, and Linda hit on it way early in our discussion, is communication, is talk. I love the fact that she wanted just to take any questions from y'all. And that's awesome. And dialogue is so important. And when you hear their story, then, you know, and their experience, you can understand better and empathize. They'll hear your story, and they'll understand and empathize, you know, better. I think another thing, and then I promise I'm stopping after this, and you guys jump in. The other thing I think we can do as a church, I think we need to do a much better job, because every Sunday we have people come from all walks of life. Folks who are smart, folks who are not so smart, Republicans, Democrats, folks who have money, folks who don't have money, people of color, people not of color. We have all of these different backgrounds, people who have illnesses, people who are healthy. All of these categories we can put people in. And sometimes, because people are different than us, we get comfortable, as Linda said earlier, we get comfortable with those that we're comfortable with, and you can walk by and neglect and actually hurt people's feelings by not reaching out and talking to them, because you go and talk to the same people you're going to talk 3 or 4 more times to this week before the week's over, and some of you 2 or 3 more times before this day is over, and not reach out to welcome people and encourage them and to bless them in a couple of minute conversation or even longer, and being sensitive to the leading of the Holy Spirit and making those connections.
I just wanted to respond to say that I think the things that we can do is just ask the questions. Mm-hmm. You know, wherever you're feeling uncomfortable, it's okay. You know, I'm willing to answer those questions. I'm open, and it's okay, because it's 2 different cultures. So how would you not know unless you ask? You know, my culture and upbringing would have been different than yours. And so it's okay. It's interesting to even know and want to know. Mm-hmm. And so I feel asking the questions. I mean, we can say, okay, well, your skin is different. You know, what cleanser do you use on your skin? Your hair looks different. And so, you know, how do you, what do you do when you do your hair? And, you know, these are different things. We even pronounce words different. We may say aunt and then we hear and. And so why? Why are there differences? And so I think the only way we would understand and know is by us asking each other questions.
You know, I think that bridge is to have a spirit like Pastor Don. You show love to everybody. It doesn't matter who you are. You're going to get some love in his presence. And I think that is the bridge to everybody coming together. You have to be kind to people. Kindness is powerful. Love is the greatest thing is love is powerful. And kindness is the light compared to any darkness. It's going to light up any room. Kindness. Evil never prevails. Kindness lasts forever.
That's awesome. So we just need to have conversation. That's a starting point that any one of us can do. I would challenge you. I mean, I love it. Just that you know, ask questions. They are not offended at the questions, you know. And I learn, and you learn. We all learn when we share. And I would say I would encourage you to have them over for dinner. Have the kids sitting around the table. Let the kids ask questions.
I second that emotion.
You know, and Anthony always loves eating a good meal, and so, but it's great. When I talk to my boys about some of the things that we did right, and of course I'm at the age right now as a parent where I don't feel like I did very much right, but they say that we had key leaders in our home and missionaries and people from, you know, around the world into our home and at our dinner table just for them to listen, you know, just for them to get to know and ask questions. And I think that is so invaluable or so valuable for us to do that.
But just one important point here is that I do want to make is the stereotyping. And so we stereotype because we know that it happens the majority of the time. And so, yes, we do fall into that stereotype because, you know, people that are black, you may think, okay, they're bad. You know, they're late all the time, or, you know, they do things a certain way. And so this stereotype causes now us to have to deal with some of those things because people are afraid because they think black people are bad. And so I just want you to feel comfortable and know that, yeah, there is a stereotype, and yes, it becomes that way because there's the majority of the things that occur to make it that way. But know that everyone is just not like that.
Yeah. Let's take one final question for both of you. It's a great question, so I want to touch on it. The question is simply, and it's a great question, why is the phrase, the quote, "all lives matter," so offensive?
Oh, I'm glad you asked that question. That's a really good question. And I'm going to respond in this manner. When they use that term, Black Lives Matter, they're looking at injustice, inequality. And so when you see that, you know, there's a suburban life, and suburban life, you're living well, you're doing good, you're not experiencing the problems, you're not being stereotyped, and you're not, you know, you're being, you know, open the doors, and, you know, here you're not having problems. But then you have the black life right next door where they're experiencing different issues. And so they get judged. They may not have a favor. And so when they speak black lives, they're just saying, please just have us be equal. Because that black life over here is just not at the same level as the lives in America. Mm-hmm. So that's why they're just pointing out, Black Lives Matter too. Like, we you know, they're here and they do matter. But we understand totally all lives definitely matter. It's just we're trying to make it be equal.
Yeah.
To me, that's not offensive. I like that somebody asked that question because just like my wife said, all lives matter. You know, when you see people shot in the street, unarmed people shot in the street with no accountability, right and wrong is right or wrong. I don't care who's doing it. You can be whatever color you want. But when you have unarmed people dying in the street and nobody's accountable, that is truly a problem. And it seems like why they say Black Lives Matter, it seems like it was black folk. I know white folk get killed by the police too, but on video is black people getting killed with no accountability. That is why they say Black Lives Matter and all lives matter. But the thing is, we want our life, like my wife said, to matter just like yours. We're not saying that we're more special. We just want to sit right next to you and let it be the response the same way. If somebody killed you, you want somebody to stand accountable, or somebody in your family. It should be consequences to wrong.
Mm-hmm. Let me just kind of wrap it up. Pastor Matt in Detroit, met him this summer, helped me with this because we were sitting around a table discussing a unity service that I was a part of, and he was just like you guys, said just ask me any questions, and I said, okay, let me just ask you one. It was much like the question that I just asked. I said, if you were to say to me, Black Lives Matter, I would say, amen, Black lives do matter. But then I would probably follow it up and go, and all lives matter. And would that be offensive to you? And he said, yes, it would. And then he said, everybody's experiences are a bit different. He said, from where he came from, his background, different than yours, but that he had been told all his life, or it was reaffirmed to him, that he doesn't matter as a black man, that he never mattered. And now people were saying, at least, somewhat vocally, that he did matter. And so that was an encouragement, to him. He did agree that all lives matter. He just felt that connection, that nobody was in his kind of spear saying, you matter, your value, your worth, you're created in the image of God. God loves you, and you are wholly special in his name. And so I appreciate that. Let me just wrap this up by thanking you guys. Will you give them a very nice round of applause? Thank you so much. You guys are awesome. Let me just share a scripture with you, because where I really wanted to take us, love you guys, muchly. Where I wanted to take us was this little bit into the world of biblical justice. Because we hear a lot in our world, in our culture, about social justice. And the Bible has a whole lot to say about this whole idea of justice. We often tend, in our church, to make it a simply spiritual issue. That God is about righting the wrong of sin in our heart. And we make the whole salvation decision and dialogue simply about our soul and presenting a gospel message and people responding to the gospel message. When you study the Bible and you look at the whole redemptive story, the whole redemptive plan of God, it certainly includes the death, burial, and resurrection. But then we also have the right, or we also have the responsibility as God's ambassadors in this world to do what? To be light, to bring the light of God and the love of God. Listen to what Jesus said. This is what Jesus said in John chapter 3, verses 19 through 21. And John is big on this theme of justice. He said, "This is the verdict. Light has come into the world, but people love darkness instead of light because their deeds were evil. Everyone who does evil hates the light and will not come to the light, for their deeds will be exposed. For whoever lives by the truth comes to the light, so that they may see plainly that what they have done has been done in the sight of God." Let me just kind of flip these off here real quick. What the Bible wants to tell us, and this is right on the heels of John 3:16, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life." The story of God's redemption is so great. It is so powerful. It is not only simply a message about redeeming or restoring what is broken in your life because of sin. It is also about redeeming what was lost or broken in this world because of sin. Families fighting with families, people warring with people, poverty, and all other issues that are promulgated and just jettisoned out there for us because of sin that doesn't get exposed. And the gospel message deals with my sin and my sinfulness. Oh, it absolutely does. And we made this point in the first service. But we also have a responsibility to bring God's light. You're the light of the world. You're the salt of the earth. And we're to take God's message of love and of kindness and of redemption and of forgiveness and of hope to a world that desperately needs to hear it. I've been in the Kirby Church phone app, there are 4 references that I've given you for the last 6 weeks. One reference is White Too Long. It's a hard book to read for me because he kind of documents a little bit, not a little bit of, or a lot, of Christianity's kind of complicity sometimes in this issue of race, or kind of turning an eye, a wayward eye, to issues of injustice, where we weren't the light of the world. We didn't shine the light in darkness. We didn't take a stand, and our silence was so loud. He tells a story about Samuel Wilkes. Wilkes was a farmhand come out of slavery. The plantation owner was Cornfield, and they had kind of a nice working arrangement, the former slave and the plantation owner. His mother was sick, and he needed some money to go a couple of towns away to visit his ailing money, and for whatever reason, the boss wouldn't give him the money and wouldn't forward. An argument ensued that carried over to the field the next day. Canfield pulled out a gun and pointed it at him, and before he knew it, he had taken the axe and he threw it, mortally injuring, fatally injuring. So here's the story. He went on the run for over a month. Gossip and the story got bigger and bigger and bigger as the month went on. It was Saturday night and they captured him. Rumor had it that he would be put into jail. There were 4 bounties out for his arrest. This was such big news in Georgia that the Atlantic and West Railroad Company made 6 special runs from Atlanta to Newnan, where he would be tried and hung. But the trial never happened. Mob rule kind of took over in the about 11, 12 o'clock on Sunday morning. They took him away from the jail. For 30 minutes, they cut off his fingers and body parts. They bound him in chains, stripped him naked. They now plan to burn him as they would hang him. Church was letting out. Church, where they buckle the Bible belt in the South. Church. The Baptists, the Methodists, the Presbyterians, the outliers in the community. They all started following the mob as they wound through town and went to the field to where there was the tree. They watched and some cheered as they put the timbers up to burn Wilkes. This went on for a good bit. And the crowd swelled to, some think, between 500 and 1,000. It was not an accurate count. But by now, the church people outnumbered the mob people. And nobody, not a pastor, not a deacon, not a Sunday school teacher, not a prayer warrior, not a person who'd been saved for 40 years, not a person who just got done hearing the preacher preach or hearing the singer sing or giving their offering or taking the Lord's Supper. Not a one of them spoke up and said, this is wrong. People created in the image of God, no matter how heinous their crime or reprehensible, their actions are not deserving of this treatment. Let the law take its course. Instead, the flames were lit and the people cheered. Church people. I've probably read that story that covers about 5 pages on my Kindle book. And every time I do, I don't ever want to be that church, and I don't ever want to be that pastor that follows the cultural crowd and just accepts things without thinking it through biblically, without thinking it through scripturally. And yes, I'm an American. Second, I am a child of God first. And there are hurts in our world that we have the opportunity to step up and lean into. Whether it's one-on-one or a group, you have the opportunity to make a difference for the kingdom of God, through the power of the kingdom of God, through the death, burial, and resurrection of the Son of God, Jesus Christ. And for too long, our voices have been silent. We've made our salvation solely about making us happy. While there's a broken world around us, and as long as we can go in our own little home, in our own little corner, and shut the door and block out the world, then it's okay. I'll just change the channel and not watch the news today. I'm not advocating fanatical, radical anything. I'm simply saying that God has called us as His children to be the light of the world and the salt of the earth. And I'm just simply saying it is time we take our responsibility seriously as light of the earth and salt of the world. Because of the brokenness, because of sin. And the government does not have an answer for sin, but Jesus Christ does. And that's where you and I have to stand. Would you bow your heads and close your eyes, and let's pray together. Our Heavenly